that is so deeply painful for us.
And there is anger. Diana's brother said she may have been driven to her death by photographers.
It would appear that every proprietor and editor of every publication that has paid for intrusive and exploitative photographs of her, encouraging greedy and ruthless individuals to risk everything in pursuit of Diana's image, has blood on his hands today.
Diana's death has clearly shaken the nation, and its grief is just now beginning.
And thousands of people came to Buckingham Palace to pay their respects to Princess Diana. Prince Charles will fly to Paris to retrieve the body of his ex-wife and return Diana to Britain. Keith Miller, NBC News, London.
We are joined here at the studio by ventricle and then subsequent emergency chest surgery and manual stimulation of the heart. Walk us through what that would have entailed.
Well, here we see a diagram of the chest and the heart, and the lining around the heart, which is called the pericardium, is a sac or a potential space that the heart actually sits in. And it's very possible, and this is purely speculation because we don't know exactly what the cause of death was, but it is very possible that she ruptured the left ventricle, which is here, or possibly one of these great vessels, this being the aorta, which is the main artery that comes out of the heart, or the superior vena cava, or the pulmonary arteries, and possibly some bleeding occurred into this space here known as the pericardium, which may have produced a clinical situation known as cardiac tamponade, which is a phenomenon where that sac fills with blood and prevents the heart from filling with blood from the body, and therefore having what's called a cardiac output or flow of blood to the body.
The heroic part of this, and correct me if I'm wrong, and the extraordinary part of her treatment was that for 2 hours, we were told by Associated Press last night, they manually massaged her heart while doing other work to try to keep her alive. That would be extraordinary if true, correct?
Absolutely, it'd be extremely extraordinary, and I'm sure that their efforts were heroic to say the least. When she lost her blood pressure, which presumably happened, they may have opened her chest cavity to try to relieve any blood that might have formed in the pleural cavities, which are the lining spaces around the lungs, and put what's called a chest tube in, which helps to suck out any or remove any blood from the lung spaces. And potentially she continued to have very, very low blood pressure despite that effort. And then they decided to actually open the chest cavity and expose the pericardial sac, which is that sac that the heart sits in that I just described. And possibly if there was blood in that sac from a traumatic rupture of one of the arteries, they would have opened that sac to then relieve that blood, and then literally have the heart in their hands, and they would be able to compress the heart with their hand to try to create cardiac output.
Could an impact in an automobile have been forceful enough to tear or injure the left ventricle?
It could have very well. I mean, it's possible that the ribs or the sternum were fractured and then lacerated the heart or the left ventricle, or could have lacerated any one of the great vessels that I just described that comes out of the heart.
And I'm imagining time was of the essence. It took an hour for them to get her out of the car, and she, in effect, in the end, bled to death. Had she gotten out of that car sooner, I guess her prognosis would have been a little better.
It's hard to say because apparently she was conscious when she was coming out of the car, and that implies that she had a blood pressure and was able to mentate, that her brain was functioning. She was getting oxygen to her brain, and whatever happened in the hospital appeared to have occurred suddenly. Perhaps there was a slow leak or slow bleed that then became worse, or the tamponade, or the pressure built up in that pericardial sac slowly and eventually reached a critical pressure where the heart was no longer able to beat. And that could have happened very suddenly. She might have been stable one moment and the next moment might have been unconscious.
From Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, Dr. Lawrence Miller, thank you very much for lending your opinion here.
We liked her very much. We admired her work for children, for people with AIDS, for the cause of ending the scourge of landmines in the world, and for her love for her children, William and Harry. And I know that this is a very difficult time for millions of people in the United Kingdom who are deeply shocked and grieving. And the American people send their condolences to all of them, and we value their friendship, and we understand this great and painful experience.